everybody. Welcome to Immediate Immersion Live. We are on episode number 4, and we're going to talk about classroom management today. If you're watching live, please go ahead and let me know where you're watching from in the chat, and we'll be right back after this short intro. And welcome back. So as I said, today we're going to talk about classroom management. Alicia from Woodinville, Washington, near Seattle. Thank you for watching, Alicia. So today we're going to talk about classroom management. I've got lots of things to talk about. I hope you can share some of your ideas as well. This is a really important topic to me this year. I can't remember. I'm over 20 years teaching. I think 21, something like that. I can't think of it anymore. But either way, I have a really rough around the edges class first period. And so we've only had 3 days of school, and it's taken everything out of me to get some semblance of control of that class. I got about 24, 25 students, so it's a pretty full class. Our max at our school is 34 students. These are a mix of 7th and 8th graders. About 50% of them have a variety of IEPs for a whole lot of different reasons. I have a lot of kids with anxiety issues and don't want to speak. And I'm like, we're in a language class. And then I have the other 50% of kids have deathly allergies. So without their EpiPen, they aren't going to make it very far. So it's a real challenging group. On the very first day, I already had some curse words thrown out, and it's the first day, first period. So first thing in the morning, I had some kids who refused to go into the classroom. I had a couple of escapees who ran out of the classroom. So it's just a lot. It is really just a lot. So I'm hoping that we can all get together and get some ideas. I can share some things that I've been doing and some ideas that I have. And I welcome any ideas that you guys do or do differently than I do. And I am open to anything with this group. The rest of my classes are fine. I mean, just the normal school stuff, no big issues. And I haven't had to lay down the law at all for them just yet. But on Friday, Thursday was our first day of school. Friday was our second day, and today was our third. On Friday, I had to give them already a little bit of a lecture, and I don't like to do that right in the beginning. But I'm like, I can either be the nice teacher and the fun teacher, or I can be the strict teacher. It's up to you, and your behavior is how it determines what that is. So even though they all said that they wanted the fun and more relaxed teacher, their actions demonstrated they needed a little bit more firmness. So that's usually not my style, but that's what I had to do, and it worked a little bit better today. So has anybody else, I see there's about 5 of you watching right now, have any of you started school back yet? Why don't we start with that? I know there's a delay between what I say and what you hear, so it'll be a couple second delay before things will start to pop up. Matthew says, not yet September, lucky dog. Yeah, teachers have been back a full week, and this is our second week, but kids only came back on Thursday. Okay, so then and Alicia says, no, but I'm teaching a summer tutorial for new Latin students now. Real year starts September 7th. I'm always jealous of those who get to start in September. we get exactly 8 weeks off. We get the month of June and the month of July, and we come back in August. So then if no one else other than me has started school already, what are your concerns, thoughts, fears, wishes about classroom management? Matthew says, out of control behavior. Absolutely. I'm already experiencing that in my first period. Mostly it's not really harmful or destructive. It's a lot of the chatty and then the touchy. Hitting and poking and stealing backpacks and water bottles. All the stuff the kids should have grown out of by now. Okay, so let's go ahead and start then with Elise says, finding that balance between fun and engaging and having an orderly class. My school favors the orderly. Yeah, and I am the opposite. I am more of the fun and engaging. That's where I like to lie. So there's a lot. I can completely understand where you're coming from. You still want the orderly class, but you still want to be fun and engaging. We'll talk about that a little bit today. And Jody says, demo classes are the 31st of August and September 1st and 2nd. Formal classes start September 5th. Awesome. So let's go ahead and... Whoops, there it goes. Let's talk a little bit about establishing and listing rules. Now, all the studies that I've read, all the books that I've read favor less rather than more rules. I forgot the name of the guy. He won a teacher award maybe 12, 13 years ago. Clark. His last name is Clark, is coming to my mind. I'm horrible with names, so I apologize. But he came up with like 50 rules that he uses and lives by in his classroom. It's a great book to read, but by all other books, 50 is way too much. Jody says, my classroom used to be upstairs in the library, but apparently she requested my department be moved as we are wicked loud. Awesome. Yeah, we're pretty loud myself, especially when we sing our songs. We are loud and obnoxious. So when it comes to rules, we want to do less rather than more. I use 5 rules in my classroom. Number 1 is it's not okay to talk to your neighbor, to kind of shut down the side chatter. 2, you need to actively listen and participate in class, not only with your eyes, but also your ears. 3, don't sink, ask questions. I want them to ask as many questions as possible. So when they don't understand, I want those questions to be answered. 4 is make smart choices. And I used to stop there at the make smart choices until I had a kid throw a paper airplane across the room. And I said, well, you broke rule number 4, make smart choices. And he goes, well, I thought it was a smart choice. So then I had to add my next rule, my last rule. It's the one to cover anything that a student could possibly think of to do. And my 5th rule is keep Profe happy. So nobody else can determine if I'm happy or not but me. So no matter what they do, the things I can't even possibly think of that they might do could be a rule violation of number 5, because all I have to say is, does it look like I'm happy right now? You broke rule number 5. So those are my general rules. And I've always been the person who gives my rules to my kids. I've never been that teacher that comes together and have them come up with the rules. Does anybody do that, where they have the kids come up with norms for their classroom or rules for their classroom? While you're typing in there, I'll just say that for me, as I said, I've never done that. I'm a big control freak. Joanne says, I tried norming last year. They really didn't care. That's my fear as well. I know teachers have done it successfully, but as I said, I'm a control freak, so I like to tell them what my rules are. They're not very hard to follow. They're pretty encompassing, and they're pretty basic. But I need more buy-in from this first period class that I have. So today was better. I'll tell you, for assigned seats, I don't give assigned seats until a class needs assigned seats. And then we change every calendar month. So many of my classes can make it all year long because they respect the classroom and I don't have any problems, so then they don't have to get assigned seats. But for the first time in the history of my teaching, I have given assigned seats this early in the school year. I would have done it on last Friday, but I just had too much to do and was back to school night on Thursday night after school. I did not get a chance to do assigned seats, but I did today, and it helped a little bit. So I got a little bit of that side check because I separated. I did boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl to kind of keep the boys who are the chattier ones apart from each other and the touchy-hitty, steely water bottle kind of thing. So it was a little bit better, but I do need to get more buy-in from this class because they're a more troubled class. Their kids, it's a new class for us. It's called Spanish 1B, for a lack of a better name for it. It's in between Spanish 1 and Spanish 2, and it's for kids who didn't do so well in level 1 and need some more work on the foundations before they can move and be successful in level 2. Now, some of the kids in the class are kids who either started late with us in the year, so they might have missed 2 or 3 months of school, which puts them at a disadvantage. But because we're an IB school, they're required to take a language, it doesn't work well together that way. Some of the kids just really struggled and need extra help. And then some of the kids were behavior problems, and that's why they struggled. So I have got a large mixture of all of those types that I'm trying to work in. So I'm going to try this tomorrow. Today we did another activity. But tomorrow I'm going to start to I've given my rules already, but I'm going to start with a conversation of what do we need in this classroom to look like to be successful learners, because I want them all to be successful learners so they can move to the next level next year. So we're going to have this discussion. I won't have it in any of my other classes. It's not necessary in those classes, but I think to get some buy-in, to make some team building skills, this will help this class. So we definitely want to establish our rules, whatever they are, whether we are establishing our own rules that we came up with, or we work together as a class to come up with rules. We want to establish them. And whatever they are, you want to post them on the wall where everybody can see them. So I have my 5 rules posted. You can get my 5 rules if you want in the resources. Let's see, I'll type it here in the chat, mm.us/resources. So there, you can download my rules. Proface rules, I think, is what they're called. There's a lot of things there, but the rules is on there, and you can print those out if you'd like to use those like I did. Joanne says, I had a class last year, Spanish 3, that was very chatty. I asked them to move away from their trigger person. We became much more productive. Later in the year, they asked if they could go back to the... I'm not sure what you got cut off there. Back to the original seats. I allowed it, and they felt the challenge to behave well and did so. Awesome. Yeah, see, that's my thing. I don't assign the seats, but what I learn from when I don't assign my seats is which students not to sit those kids by in the future if we have to go to assigned seats. A lot of kids will make it through, this classes will make it through the whole year or close to the whole year, but they learn that the not assigned seats is a privilege. And so it's one that they want to earn and keep. So I think it's really important. So yes, then list your rules. Make sure they are visible for everybody to see. There's another point I was going to make about that, and I just forgot what it was. Establish rules, list the rules. Oh, yes. You want to have fewer the better. So they suggest 3 to 5 rules is what the majority of the experts in classroom management say. 3 to 5 rules. Anything more than that, it's really hard for the kids to remember. And if they can't remember them, how are they going to follow them? The next aspect is staying positive. And this is what we do in a lot of different ways. So we want to state our rules as positively as possible. So instead of saying you can't do something, say something you can do if possible. Not all rules can be stated positively, but try to state them as positive as possible. The other thing, the way to be staying positive is to, when you are disciplining in the classroom, it's really hard in the moment, I know, but to phrase your comments in a positive way. So instead of saying, stop talking, you can say, do you have a question? Kind of not being, I know that comes across sometimes sarcastic, but it's stating it in a more positive way. Instead of calling them out and embarrassing them, we're trying to put a more positive spin on our corrections. And whenever possible, if it's a really big deal, it's best to have a private conversation with the student rather than a public one. Erica says, I use packets. My students will take out their cell phone after completing the assigned work. How can I make my class more rigorous? Okay, Erica, so you... Okay, I'm not sure. Let's see if I follow correctly. So you think your class is not rigorous because they are taking out their cell phones after they complete their packets? Because there's two different rigorous I'm thinking here. That your class isn't academically rigorous, or do you mean it's not behaviorally rigorous because they go right to the cell phone when they're done with their work? While you're adding to your notes there, Matthew says, yes, with a positive tone. Absolutely. Try to keep it positive as much as possible. Whenever possible, it works so much better. Yes, watching YouTube. My class is too easy. So do you use comprehensible input at all, Erica? Or do you teach traditionally with a textbook? While you're responding, some ideas here are coming off the top of my head. The first is you need to establish those rules right in the beginning. If you don't want them using cell phones, then tell them you don't want them. I made a mistake in my earlier years of teaching. I taught high school. I expected and I assumed, and you know what they say about assumptions, I assumed that because they were in ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades, they already knew how to do school and behave. But I was wrong. So I had to teach them. I had to tell them my expectations so that they could follow them. So I told them, we are not using cell phones. I told them, we are not talking right now, so that they understand what my expectations are. So if you don't want them to use cell phones, you need to let them know right away not to use cell phones. I tell them they are not allowed to use their cell phones unless I give them permission to use their cell phones. They are so well trained in that they know that they can't, even if they want to take a picture of some notes on the board, they know they have to ask me. They just can't take their cell phone out. Okay, let's see. Erica continues to say, no, I work in an urban area. I used T's Branche textbook. I complete all textbook activities and workbook activities. I teach high school and middle school. Okay, so being rigorous academically does not have a lot to do with giving work like that to do. I would find ways, instead of relying so much on the textbook, because the kids are bored with that. They're looking for other things to do to entertain themselves. And so I would try to find other ways to use the material from the textbook, but in more engaging ways. For example, I probably would not use the workbook activities and the textbook activities, the written ones. If I had to use those, then I would give those as homework, because that's something easily done in homework. Rather than waste my classroom time doing that, I want to get them actively using the language in the classroom. Even if you don't use comprehensible input, look for those activities in the textbook that are interactive, that aren't write the question, write the answer, and use those to engage more in your classroom. Use YouTube to your advantage. Find good videos in the target language that you can use and make comprehensible for your students to engage them with that. But my first thing would be to start and establish those rules. Going back with the cell phones, a couple other things that people have tried. Some use those shoe caddies, and then kids have to turn in their cell phones when they come into the classroom. Everybody turns in their cell phone, including the teacher, so that it's all everybody, it's all fair and square. So that will help in some things like that. The other is telling them you can't use your cell phone, but I'll give you 2 minutes at the end of class to use your cell phones, but you can't use your cell phones until that 2 minutes. If someone uses their cell phone before that 2 minutes, then nobody gets to use their cell phone that day at all. So that's another kind of solution to that. And then a tricky solution is kids are always need to charge their phones. So a lot of teachers will set up charging stations in the back of the room. And so kids will use them to charge their phones. And when their phones are charging, obviously they're not going to be in their hands and not use them. But for that rigor in your classroom, I would try to do what they call a flipping of the classroom. Do those homework type activities outside of class, the workbook and the textbook activities. If you can get away with not doing them at all, then I would not do them at all. I would find other ways to engage them with the material that's in the textbook. Cultural videos, speaking activities, have conversations with them, do some listening activities and some reading activities with them. And then I would also insert brain breaks. Now, depending on your age group and how long they can sit still, you might do brain breaks every 10, 15, 20, or 30 minutes, depending on the kids and how much they need a break from that. And so brain breaks are just quick 2 to 5 minute activities to get them out of their seats, get them moving around, and then they go back and lets them refocus. For more information on that, you can look at Maestra Loca's website. La Maestra Loca. And I see other comments. I'll get to those in just a second. I just wanted to address that. Okay. So then Joanne says, few kids have barriers to their cell phones. When it's game time, almost all the iPads or an iPad school are dead. Once the phones come out, a percentage will be dropped from the game. Yes, they do have few barriers with that, especially after COVID. They were trained to use those. It was their only connection to the outside world, and it has a negative impact on the kids' mentality. That's something we've been focusing on the last couple of years, is explaining the negative effects of using a cell phone or a small screen for extended periods of time. Joanne says, this year I will not allow them. Absolutely. You're welcome, Erica. Jody also says, I have a wire basket called O Telefono. No more phone breaks partway through the class. That was a disaster last year. You have to gauge your own classes and your own students and see what they can handle and what they can't. Our school rule is, except before school, during lunch, and after school, your phone needs to be off and in your backpack. If it's seen at all, you can get in trouble for it, unless a teacher gives you permission to use it. My personal rule is, if you intentionally use your cell phone in class without my permission, I will take it, and your parents will have to pick it up at the front office after school. And then, because I can't trust you, the rest of the school year, you must put your phone on my desk and leave it there till the end of class. You can pick it up at the end of class every day, but you can't keep the cell phone at all in my class because you can't handle it. And no, I'll never let them use their cell phone in my class because they lost that privilege. But for me, my whole classroom philosophy is I treat you like an adult until you show me you're not. I've never done the phone, put them all in the little phone, the shoe box thing. I know a lot of teachers do that, and it's very successful for them. I have not had to resort to that yet. But if it comes down to that and I need to, I'm not averse to it. Okay, great. So they're staying positive. The next thing that's really important, and I know I am guilty of this as well, is modeling the behavior that we want to see. That's a big deal. If you want quiet time for something, then you can't be talking. So, for example, if you're doing silent reading and you're telling the kids they need to read and be quiet, you can't be talking because you need to model the behavior. If you want silent reading and you want them to buy into it, guess who's got to read too? You have also got to read. You can't just sit and do something else. If you want kids to be respectful to you, you need to be respectful to them even when you're disciplining them. If you don't want to be embarrassed, you don't want to embarrass the kids in front of you either. So you need to model that behavior that you want to see from kids. And I have found that when I do model the behavior, they do start to mirror that behavior back. It's natural human tendencies to mirror that behavior. So when I'm respectful to kids, they're respectful back to me. When, I ask them to do something and I'm sincere and I'm not judgmental, then they don't give me usually, not always, I mean, there's some exceptions always, but they don't generally give me attitude about doing it. There's a difference of saying, be quiet, and you say, please be quiet. Just the way you approach things and model that behavior. Also, explanations sometimes help. I need you to be quiet so that everybody can hear me. or I need you to be quiet so I can hear. My big thing this year is I'm old. I've had to wear reading glasses. My ears don't work as well anymore. So I'm like, you got to be kind to the old man here. And I need to be able to hear. Anybody have any ideas on modeling behavior, things they do in their classrooms? While you're contemplating that, I will move on to the nonverbal cues. One of the biggest nonverbal cues I use is silence. This year I did not, thank gosh. But almost every other school year, even though I know this to be true, it takes me 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 months before I realize and go, oh, yeah, that's what I used to do, and I need to implement that again. And that is be silent. When I want it silent in the classroom, telling kids to be quiet, shushing kids, all of those things add to more noise. So number one, it's not modeling what I want. And number two, it turns almost into an argument, a challenge. Who can speak louder? I don't want that atmosphere in my class. So one of the major nonverbal clues that I do is I stop teaching and I just wait. Sometimes I'll even put my finger to my lips. I don't say anything judgmental. I don't get angry. I don't get frustrated. I don't count to 10. All I do is stand there quietly waiting. And I wait no matter how long it takes. No matter how long it takes, I will wait. If I have to wait the entire class, I have to wait the entire class. I promise you, each time you wait, it will be less and less and less. But waiting, there's no point in arguing with them, and there's no point in teaching over the noise. And adding to it by saying, class, be quiet. 1, 2, 3, we're all quiet. We're all being quiet now. It's just adding to the noise. And I found it just much more successful just to stand there, be quiet, and wait. And it even worked in my difficult class today. I'm picturing that class right away. I had a student who is sitting and turning to his neighbor to talk. And all I did was, and I waited. And I only waited maybe 1, maybe 2 minutes. And then he goes, oops, sorry. And then stopped. So it's a really great cue. Matthew says, modeling the steps to an activity using a gradual release of responsibility. Absolutely. I didn't put these in here, but let's talk about that before we continue with nonverbal, because I forgot to add that into my list of topics to talk about. Classroom procedures are so very important. You need to have a procedure for every aspect of your classroom. You cannot assume kids know how to turn in papers. They know how to go to the bathroom. They know how to sit in their seats properly. They know how to read properly. All of those things need a procedure. But the procedure itself is not enough. You have to practice that procedure as if it were like a fire drill. Think back to elementary school. In elementary school, teachers work really hard on procedures. But as we get older in the middle and high school, we don't do it as much. And it's problematic. I remember when I first started teaching high school, they gave me what was the name of that book? Wong, I forgot the name. I told you I'm horrible with it. The First Day of School or something like that. And I said, what does this book have to do with me? It's all elementary school kids. But it was all about the procedures. And it took me 3 or 4 years before I realized how important procedures are even in high school. So you need to not only tell them the procedures, you need to practice them over and over again until they become second nature. Everything you do in class, make no assumptions. Make it like classroom for dummies. Not saying my kids are dummies, but you know what I mean. Harry Wong, that's the one I was thinking, the first days of school. Thank you, Matthew. That's exactly what I was thinking about. It's a really good book, even for high school, middle school teachers to read. So, model everything. So, model it and practice it exactly as you want it done. Back to the elementary school teachers. They're walking to the library. They teach them, they want to walk along the wall in a singular line and no talking. Some teachers even have them bring their finger to their lips and hold it down. Yes, thank you, Alicia. The First Days of School by Harry and Rosemary Wong. Excellent book, absolutely. So then, if someone starts talking or breaks the line or removes their finger from their lips, what does the elementary school teacher do? They go all the way back to the classroom and start again. They may never get to the library that day. But I promise you, by the end of that class period, they're going to know how to walk to the library. And it's the same thing. So, tomorrow is our first silent reading day. I explained the procedure today because it's something they do when they first walk into classroom. The instructions will again be on the board when they walk in so they can read them right away. But if they're not doing it properly, guess what? I'm going to kick all of my kids out and I'm going to ring my fake bell and they're going to come back in and start over again. And we're going to do that every time until they learn. I come in the classroom on a Tuesday, I'm going to get my book, I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to read. Passing in papers. I have kids passing the papers. I have 2 rows in a U formation, so it's a double U, one inside the other. So how I want my papers done is the back row passes to each other, and then the front row passes all the way to each other to the end. Then the back row passes their stack up to the front row. And I time them. I want to do it as fast as possible. If it sucked, guess what? Everybody gets their paper back and we keep on doing it. Joanne asked an incredible question. Do you explain all the procedures, etc. in English or in the target language? Depends on the level. I always err on the side of English only because I want, my principal cannot back me. If I explained a procedure in Spanish and the kid says, even though I know they do, that they didn't understand it, and I give them in trouble for not following a procedure, then the principal can't defend me to the parent because there's no proof that the kid understood what I told him. But if it's in English, obviously there's no dispute anymore. So I do err on the side of English. In my upper levels, I'll have the procedure written in English on the board on a slide, but then I will explain it in Spanish. So they had both inputs there, but that's a very good question. If I'm going to break into English, the 2 ways I'm going to do it is for classroom management and for classroom procedures and instructions. So those are the ones I do. So think about all the procedures that you do in your class. Think about all the procedures. I'll get you in just one second, Erica. All the procedures, all the things that you need kids to do in your classroom. Turn in papers, return papers back, sit in their seats, get up from their seats. How do they leave the class? How do they enter the class? What do they do if this happens? What do they do to ask for a drink? What do they do to go to the bathroom? All those things, come up with a procedure. Don't teach them all in one day. That's too overwhelming. Spread them out and then tell them, practice it until they get it good. Erica says, I have limited proficiency in the language I am teaching. Do you have tips or suggestions? What are you teaching, Erica? What language? One thing I will suggest to boost your proficiency in the language is to watch YouTube videos, watch Disney movies, watch TV movies, watch Netflix movies in the target language with subtitles turned on so that you can learn it better. So Erica has French. So you need to help your language skills by doing the things that we want our kids to do. So you want to listen and read as much French as possible. So you might want to get some French readers for yourself to read some French. You might want to, as I said, listen to YouTube, Netflix, movies, Disney movies in French to help your French. You might even take some classes in French. And I would highly recommend, here I'll put it in the chat, fluencyfast.com. I take a intermediate French class on Sundays. We haven't started this year yet, but they meet once a week on Sundays in French through fluencyfast.com. They have lots of different languages available. They're usually on Zoom. They have beginning French ones, and I'm not sure where your French proficiency lies, but you can go to one of the, figure out where you would best fit and take one of those classes. The intermediate is done by Daniel Dubois and Sabrina, and I can never remember her last name or pronounce it, Jezank or something like that. She is originally from Paris, and but lives in Denver, Colorado. And Daniel is born and raised in France and still lives in France, but he's half American. His mother's American, but when she did most of her adult life in France. So he lives in France. They come together, they team teach together live on Zoom. So it's really, really great. Joanne says, I always spend, why can't it didn't pop up? I always spend August watching series and films, even though I'm in Mexico for June and July. My Mexican spouse speaks slowly and clearly. I need more accents and speed in watching films, etc. helps. Absolutely. Yes, use podcasts as well. I do find, though, that I need to see, especially when I'm learning a language, I need to see the lips. So if you can find video podcasts, those are a little bit better. I like seeing the lips so I can see how they form the sounds. It helps me a lot. That's why listening on a telephone is so much harder than understanding when you're face to face. But yes, podcasts are another great one. So yes, lots of input. And then push yourself, Erica, to use more French in your class. Learn common phrases that you can use in your class and repeat. I'm always thinking, because I'm a non-native speaker of Spanish. I have never lived in a Spanish-speaking country, so all my peers at my school speak better Spanish than I do because they have lived in countries or have spouses with spouses who speak the language. That's not me at all. I lived in America my whole life, and I learned it in America. Joanne is asking Erica, what levels do you teach? But yes, push yourself. Whenever I can't, when I have to resort to English because I don't know how to say something in Spanish, I will make a mental note to look it up after class so that I know it from then on. Which reminds me, there's a word I need to look up today, and I was meant to do it earlier and I forgot. I'm writing it down right now to look how to say that expression later on. It came up in class today, and I needed to. I don't know why it never came up before, but I need to know it. So I'll look that up, and that's another thing to do. But yes, depending on what Matt says, for Erica, many tips there. Absolutely. French 1 and 2. Last year, mainly in English. I understand French. Awesome. Then work with your proficiency slowly but surely. Try to say more and more in French every day. The more you use it, the more comfortable you'll get and you'll improve. I promise. Okay, so let's go back to our nonverbal cues. So those are just types of cues that you want to use. It could be the look that teachers give to students to get them to stop doing some behavior. It could be my silent treatment, which I really like. It really works really, really well. I get to save my voice. I don't have to be angry. My kids don't see the frustration that I'm on. So a lot of these nonverbal cues are really work well. Jody also says maybe get an AP language and culture book with CD and work on that. That's another way to do so. I think engaging in the language is probably going to be the best. And a passive way of reading a book or listening to CDs aren't always as helpful. And I want to make sure I have the right website, and I do. Here's another one that I highly recommend. italki.com. This is a site where you get matched up with people who speak the language that you want to speak, and you pay them a small fee. It depends on the person in the country to have conversations with you. And they're native speakers from that country. And so you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. They're not tutors. They have all different kinds of price ranges. You can find pretty much almost any language. And it's a great way to not only support the local economy of those countries, but also to get some practice using the language. So you could do that for, for French and see what you could find in the way of French. I'm looking on the website right now. There's like 1,295 different teachers. And the first one that comes up is $5 for 30 minutes. And then the hourly rate starts at $9 an hour. I mean, where can you get that kind of practice? They have ratings for the teachers. They go up there. I'm looking at another one who does it $29.50 an hour. But they have all their ranges. It depends what country they're living in, depends on their skill level, and etc. But it's a great way to practice. You're welcome, Erica. Okay, our next topic is praise and rewards. Now, I'll tell you that although the studies say it works, it comes across too hokey for me to say, oh, I see Susie's reading like she's supposed to, or, oh, Joey, Mark, Sandy, and Claire are getting out their notebooks. Those types of things sound really hokey, very elementary to me, but it works for many teachers. I just can't pull it off. It might be my personality. But I will praise kids for other things. I might say, thank you for reading your book today. Or give them rewards for doing that. During silent reading, if I see, let me step back a minute. I'm always err on the side of reward versus punishment. So instead of punishing kids who don't do something, I'll reward kids who do. So, for example, in our silent reading, kids who are reading, I'm reading my book, but I'm also walking around the classroom to make sure kids are reading. If I see them reading, I'll give them one of my participation points. And the kids who aren't reading won't get one. So I do those little rewards. High fives, great rewards. Thank you for doing what you're supposed to be doing. We're a PBIS, a Positive Behavior Intervention School. So we are always giving positive rewards for kids doing what is expected of them. So I'm constantly giving rewards for anything that I want my kids to continue doing, the good behaviors that I want to see. Alicia says, for nonverbal cues, John Cowart talks about different places to stand in the classroom to communicate the expectations for certain activities, like the power position for giving rules. Absolutely. Placement in the classroom, movement around the classroom is so very important. Sometimes all it's needed, another nonverbal cue, is proximity. You see two kids talking and it's only these two kids, you can walk over and teach from their point. And then they will generally stop talking or stop doing the behavior. So yes, position in the classroom, movement in the classroom. Don't always teach from the front of the room. Move around. Don't sit at your desk to teach from. Be active. You want to be able to get to any kid if something really bad happens within 2 to 3 steps, no more than that. So that very good ideas. John Coward is a real expert on classroom management, much more than I. But we want to give praise and rewards when kids do not only extra beyond things, but what they're supposed to do. We're rewarding them for what they're supposed to do. It helps them establish the expectations. Does anybody else do praise or rewards or have any ideas for that? I give out both class participation points as well as I'm going to speak my words. Class participation points as well as individual participation points. I just did a webinar on Saturday about that. If you weren't part of that, you can purchase it on my website here. It was recorded. But I talked about my reward system all there. And it's about 45 minutes, I think. We didn't have many questions, so we got through it relatively quick. Joanne says, I have a bin of prizes from Mexico, woven bracelets, keychains, and candies. That's awesome. Alicia says, that's a great point. Sometimes the well-behaved student doesn't feel seen or liked because they don't get any feedback. Absolutely. That's one of the things we really want to work on in our school. We are working really hard in trying to recognize the good kids, because it seems like the way that we were doing PBIS is we identified the kids with problems, we gave some intervention, and then we gave them rewards and prizes for following that intervention plan. But what about the kids who never got in trouble? They never got anything. And so we want to make sure that we are giving, while addressing the kids who got the issues, we also want to address the kids who have no issues. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing without us asking. And to go back to Jody's prize, her bin of prizes, I have a box too, and I have snacks in there. So the little vending size machine snacks, I go and buy them bulk on Amazon or Costco and fill that box with that. I fill it with Mexican candy. I have a little Mexican bodega right down the street from me that I can go to and fill it with some Mexican candy, some authentic Mexican candy, as well as regular American candy. So I always have this bin, and for certain things, I can say you can reach in the little box and get your prize out. I also hold a bi-monthly raffle, so every other week, where kids can take their participation points and dump them in the hat, and I pull out 2 names, and then they get to choose from the prize box. So the praise is really, really important. We want to give praise, we want to give rewards, we want to give recognition for the kids who are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Joanne says, I always bring a couple hundred caveat lollipops back from Mexico. Awesome. Yeah, my kids love the Mexican candy, so I make sure I find it wherever I can. And I can also get some on Amazon for a bigger variety if they don't have any in my bodega close by. Okay, the next one. This was a big one for me that I had trouble with. This is what I need to cover. And I hit the wrong one. Okay, there we are. Cajeta, spell check. Oh, yes, I hate when I'm trying to type in Spanish and it spell checks in English. Um, this one I had to learn. I did this a lot when I was started out teaching. When I'm not a parent, so I don't have that hawk eye to see exactly which students are doing the misbehavior, especially when it's quite a few of them. So I would punish the whole class because I thought, ooh, it's at least half, if not the majority. And so we'll just punish the whole class. That never works out well for you. You may not realize the impact of it, but the good kids are going to resent you for it. And so you don't want to do those kinds of things if you can help it. So you want to avoid class punishments. You really want to work hard to identify the kids who are misbehaving and discipline them and only them. So that's a big one, to avoid those class punishments. Penalties for the whole class because they're not doing stuff. And every once in a while I catch myself about to do it and I'm like, ooh, can't do that. So it always will backfire. So you don't want to spend time doing that at all. If at all possible, do not give out class punishments. It will always backfire. The next thing is positive calls and emails. This is a big one. I talked about it in my webinar I did on Saturday about positive calls and emails. Kids can buy these so that they can use them to their advantage, and I'll make the positive call or positive email home. They tell me what to say, and as long as it's truthful, I'm good with it. So I do that. But I also work hard for myself to try to find ways that I can give out positive calls or emails just because. So my goal this year is 5 of these emails a week. And I want to try to identify as many different kids as possible. And I especially want to target that first period because I know eventually I'm going to have some negative calls with parents. So it's better to start with a positive one before I have to go into the negative to get the parents on my side. Something else I've done this year, I've never done before, is I emailed parents before school started. I invited them to back to school night, which was on the first night of school. I also told them a little bit about my class, just in case they couldn't make it to back to school night. And if they did make it to back to school, it's just reinforcement of the information. I told them that I was looking forward to meeting their kids, and if they could share with me 3 to 5 things about their kid that nobody knows, because next week we're going to play a guessing game where I'm going to talk about some of these things and see if the kids can figure out who it was. And the parents really enjoyed that, and they thanked me for trying to get to know their kids and for including them before school even started. And then one little thing that had nothing to do with what we're talking about right now, but just an FYI, especially if you need to get books in your classroom or supplies, I created an Amazon wish list of things that I wanted for my classroom. It was all novels. I put them in there to replenish some of the worn novels that we have and to give us some new variety. And I've already gotten books in that parents have donated because they fill out this Amazon wish list. So it's a great idea to put that in there and to include it in every one of your emails, like in your signature. So just an FYI, a good piece of information. So I did that with the parents. And then I'm going to try, and I've done it the first week already, on the weekend. I write it on Friday, but I can schedule the email to go out on the weekend, that I gave them just a week update. What did we do in class? I was excited to meet your kids. This is what we're doing. This is what we did last week. And this is what you can expect for the next week. I put that in there. I thanked parents who already donated to our book drive. I included the link in that book drive. And I let parents know what to expect this week coming up. But I also am doing this with my kids. I emailed my students before school started, welcoming them to my class, setting a few expectations and what they could expect, because kids get nervous. They don't know, especially if they've not had you before. So I gave a very friendly email, and I gave a little secret. I'm not big on the passwords. I have nothing against them. It's just I rather interact with my students when they come into my classroom. I greet them in different ways. I don't want to use the password. And so I don't do the password system. But I did do a variation of it. I started this year. I gave out that email before school started and I put a secret word in it. And I said, if you tell me the secret word, you could do it either on Thursday or Friday. Those are the first 2 days of school. Tell me the secret word, then you'll get a secret prize. It was candy from my box. But my first word was ornitorrinco, which is a platypus in Spanish. And so I only had like 4 or 5 kids who read the email and then told me what the secret word was. But then yesterday I emailed my kids again saying, thank you for having an awesome week last week. Here are some things you're going to expect this week. And here's this week's secret word. And so I gave whatever, lo que sea is what I gave them for that. And again, I only accept the word on Monday and Tuesday. And I only had 1 kid today who gave me the word. We'll see if I get any more tomorrow to do that. I'm going to do that every week. It's not a way to get into my classroom like passwords. I have other interactions with my kids, like what they're wearing, what their smiles on their faces, their hair. I just compliment them as they come in. I have these short little conversations. We laugh, we joke, and they come into my classroom. I like having that kind of interaction rather than a password. But I don't mind doing the secret word because it doesn't hinder anything. They just come in, they tell me the word if they have it. If they don't, they just walk in. It's not a big deal. And I give the prizes to the kids who have it. It also gets them to read their emails because I want to keep up a weekly communication with them. So those are some great things that I do. The other thing is a school-wide initiative. We have postcards with our logo and our school on the front. And on the back, we can write what we want. And then they give us a set of sticker labels for all the addresses for our kids. We fill them out and we turn them into the front office. They put a stamp on it and then mail them out. So we're supposed to give, I forgot how many. I have to look back. I can't remember how many we're supposed to give a week. 2 or 3 a week, I can't remember. We're supposed to send out every week as a school-wide initiative that's expectation for all teachers to do this other way. Sometimes we can address it to the parents. Sometimes we address it to the students themselves. But it's a really fun way to recognize kids. And then they come back and they talk about, I got a postcard. And then the kid goes, what? Who'd you get a postcard from? So it's kind of a fun way to do things. If your school doesn't have that set up, I wouldn't, it's expensive to come up with all the stamps. If you can afford it, great. If not, then do the positive calls or emails. Those will work too. Or even write just a positive handwritten note in an envelope and hand it to the kid. That's another thing that you could do. Anybody else do anything with positive calls, emails? While we're waiting for your responses, I will continue on to consistency. If there's anything with classroom management that you need to do is be consistent. No matter what system you use, what rules you have, what plan you're planning to use, all of that stuff is you need to be consistent. Alicia says, we also send out affirmation emails and we all write postcards to our students over the summer. Awesome. Great. Anything we can do to make our kids feel like they belong and that we care about them and they're not just about grades. I remember once I gave a good phone call home to a parent and the kid was not getting a good grade in my class, but he's still one of my favorite kids. So I was telling her that I really enjoyed him in class and da-da-da-da. And then she sends me an email back. She goes, but he's not getting a good grade in your class. I go, the grade does not matter. That's not what I'm looking at always. There are kids who get good grades and there are kids who aren't, but the kid was a good kid anyway. He didn't cause me any problems. He was fun. He was funny. So I'm not putting, the positiveness just based on academics. Alicia also says, during the year we put paper on lockers for birthday greetings. So I always write my birthday wishes in Latin on them in lockers. Awesome. That's great. I have a birthday hat I make my kids wear. And then we have daily slide with the announcements, and we post all the kids' birthdays on that. We don't have lockers at our school. Lockers are uncommon in California. They're moving them out because our schools are open and they get vandalized. So we don't have lockers. Kids carry books around in their backpacks. So going back to consistency. When we're not consistent, that's when kids find a loophole and they work it. They start with this small little hole and they make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until where now it's become a huge problem. And when we're most likely to be non-consistent is when we are tired, we are sick, we are frustrated. It's at the end of the day and you're like, yeah, I know those two kids are talking right now, but it's not really bothering me right at the moment. I'll just let it go. No, that is the worst thing that you can do because it spreads like a disease faster than COVID-19. So those kids go, well, those kids got away with talking the other day, so let's go ahead and talk today. And then it goes to 2 more kids and then 2 more kids, and it just becomes now an uncontrollable. So you have to be consistent in your rules. You have to follow them every time with every student equally. I'm not going to push that student's buttons today. I know he's going to blow up. Oh, this one's too nice. I'm not going to say anything right now. They don't normally do this. No. You force the rules equally amongst everybody and you don't miss it. If you notice it, you say something. Each and every time. This consistency will mean what the teacher says, the teacher means, and what the teacher means, the teacher says. And that's really important. The moment you get lackadaisical, the moment there's a problem. I'll tell you my classic one, and I've gotten lazy only in the last couple of years. Most of my career, I've been really strict on it, and I don't know why I've gotten lazy. But I notice it causes a problem by mid-year because of my laziness. One of the things I have my kids do every day is sing a song, and we always stand. But as the year gets on, I'm like, I'm tired of telling them to stand up. I'm tired of telling them to stop leaning. Tired of telling them not, this, that, and that. So then what ends up happening is the kids don't stand up. That's the start of it. Then they start congregating together and they're talking and not even paying attention to the song. And I don't stop it because I'm into the song and I don't want to break it. I don't want to discipline. I don't want to have confrontation. All those things. And then it becomes a huge problem. By the middle of the school year, I am the only one participating in this song and nobody else is. So I need to be consistent. My rule is everybody stands, everybody sings. Period. If they don't follow that, there are consequences. I need to enforce it. Tomorrow's our first day singing songs. I'm going to start enforcing it. And my goal for this year is I'm going to enforce it all year long. And most of my years of teaching, I have. Because I've done this song thing since my second year of teaching. And I've had them stand since my second year of teaching. And almost always, it has been very, very good. But the last few years, as I get close to retirement, and I'm tired of fighting with kids, and I'm tired of arguing with them, and all kinds of things, I get lazy, and it causes a problem. So consistency is so clear. Joanne says, what's your consequence for not standing and singing? Well, standing is, if you don't stand during my 3-minute song, you'll stand for the rest of the class. So you can sit during the song, but you're going to stand for the rest of the class. Which would you rather do? Stand for 3 minutes or stand for 42 minutes. Up to you. Now, my singing, I threaten them with, if you don't sing, that must mean you're so anxious to have the spotlight on yourself and you're going to do a solo. Usually it's enough to scare the kids away from being quiet. I really don't follow through unless it becomes a real big problem. Especially in the first few days of the the song, they're still learning the song, so I get that. But kids who are obviously not trying to participate, then I say, well, we can do a solo. And it's always in my classroom, but they don't know that. I tell them, I go, it could be, I draw out of a hat where you do the solo. You can do a solo in my class. You can do a solo in someone else's class. You can do it in the office. Or you can do it in the quad at lunch on the stage. I would never make my kids do that. But in the classroom, I've done. There's a couple kids who've had to do it in the classroom. You don't want to participate. I've given them the rule right off the bat. If you don't sing, you're volunteering for a solo. And usually all it takes is solo, and the kid goes, oh, no, and starts singing right away. I don't usually have a huge problem with it. If you want kids to sing and you don't have a lot of buy-in, then reverse psychology works. Telling them you are not allowed to sing. You must stand there, look at the words, listen to the music, and do nothing else. And then what happens? They start singing and dancing without even telling them. So you can trick them into that way. It's hard in my class for them not to sing and dance because that's what I do. We did the songs today. They heard the first song of the year, each of my classes. As I explained it to them beforehand, what it all means, and then I sing it and they listen to it the first day, and we start singing it together as a class on the second day. And so they saw me sing and dance. I made a complete fool of myself so they can make complete fools of themselves. Most of the kids don't dance, but some kids do. But most of my kids will sing because I give them, I do it with them right off the bat. You can see, I put these up yesterday. If you go to this link, I put up some classroom demos of a whole lot of different activities of my classes. There's a first day in Spanish 1, a first day in Spanish 2, and then a Spanish 3 class 10 days in. And you can see the kids sing the song in my Spanish 3 class. They're standing, they're singing, and it's not an easy song. It's La Paga by Juanes. Many people consider it to be a fast song, but you hear my kids singing to it. It's one of their favorite songs of the year. They always love that song. So again, we're modeling behavior. I'm singing, I'm standing just like they are. Great question. Lastly, and I know I went over a little bit, I apologize. Gamify. Gamify your classroom management system. I find this works both with middle school and high school, and I think if it works for those two, it works for elementary as well. Again, I talked about this in my participation webinar over the weekend, but what I do is I have class points for class doing what they're supposed to do as a whole body, as a team, and then individual participation points for individuals doing what they're supposed to be doing. So the class ranks up points for doing things, and they can choose each Friday whether they want to spend these points or save them for a bigger prize. Individuals get their points, they save them. They can either buy things, most of them are privileges in the Profe store, which is just a Google Doc with different prizes and point levels, or they can save them for the raffle that we do every other week. And so both of those are ways. So I gamify. If I have a class that's really having trouble behaving, I'm going to make it more simple for them. So normally the way it works for my class team points is for every activity that we do in class where I don't have to discipline anybody or remind them what we're doing, they get a point. That's generally 4 points a day. I usually do 4 activities in my 45 minutes. On Wednesdays, we do 5 because we also do our quick writes. So let's say kids aren't getting the points they're supposed to get. So I can also motivate by saying, okay, I know you guys are chatty today, but if you can stay quiet for 3 minutes, just 3 minutes, I'll give you 3 bonus points, or 4 bonus points, or 5 bonus points. Or if you see that 2 kids can't keep their hands off each other, which I'm having a problem with now in a lot of my classes, not just my period 1, I can say, if these 2 children can keep their hands off each other for 5 minutes, I'll give the whole class 5 bonus points. So I'm looking for behaviors I want to see, and I'm giving them bonus points to help them do better. It doesn't mean every time I'm going to give them bonus points. Once they learn this rule and learn my expectations, I'm going to wean the points off. And then they just get their standard points they're supposed to. But especially if they've earned negative points for having too much bad behavior, the bonus points helps them get positive and motivates them. So I gamify things. I'm like, okay, if we can stay quiet for 10 minutes, we can have an extra brain break game. Or if nobody touches their cell phones for 43 minutes of class, then the last 2 minutes you can use your cell phones. Those types of things. Try to gamify things. You'll get a lot more buy-in, I have found. Anybody else have any ideas, questions, comments about classroom management? And all of these things, as you are thinking about your ideas, all of these things I'm working on implementing with that period 1 class. And I'm going to report back in my newsletters, in my email list, about how things are going with that class. Because it's one of the more challenging classes I have had in many, many years. And so it's almost like I'm a brand new teacher trying to figure out what is going to work with them. Because what normally works in my classes is not working with them. So I have to find something else. So I'm in constant search for ways to make classroom management better without me being a dictator, because I don't want to go down that route. If nobody has any comments or questions, then I will say good night. We're going to do another Immediate Immersion live next Monday, same time, same channel. I'm not sure what the topic is. If you have suggestions for topics, please feel free to email me. I'm going to put my email address up here. Scott@immediateimmersion.com. Matthew says this is very thorough. Merci, Scott. De rien. My horrible French, but de rien, Matthew. In anticipating the new year in my class, it's hard to remember that several were problematic last year. I want to start with a positive attitude. Absolutely. Absolutely. You're welcome, Alicia. You absolutely want to start with a positive attitude. Give everybody a clean slate to start with. Clean slate. Always. I always tell my kids, too, that no matter how angry we get at class at each other, that when the bell rings, it's over for me. I'm done with it. I don't want to hold grudges, and I want to teach that to my kids. So I tell them, there are times I'm going to lose my control. I try not to. I work really, really hard not to. But there are days I can't help it. But normally if I see I'm going to, I'll have the kid go someplace else, another classroom, for a timeout. Mostly for me to have a timeout so I don't blow up at this kid. And then I tell him, I'll have him come back at the end of the period and I'll say, you know what? We had a bad day together, both of us. So we're going to start fresh tomorrow. The bell has rung. Clean slate. Forgive and forget. And so that's really important to me, and it's a lesson I want to teach my students as well. It doesn't help anybody to hold grudges. Okay, so with that, I will say good night. Again, we'll be here live next week. I'm not sure what the topic will be, but we'll find something. And I hope everybody has a great week. And I hope to see some of you next week. Joanne says, so true. You're welcome, Joanne. And I know you sent me an email. I've been so behind in my emails with school starting last week. I'll be getting to those this week, I promise. I just got overwhelmed with the emails. I'm so behind in work. I've never been this behind before. I'm feeling overwhelmed with all the stuff I got to get done. Okay, everybody. Have a good night, and I hopefully will see you next week. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Thank you all.